The alarm cut through the darkness at 5:30 in the morning. Wyatt Thornton's hand moved automatically to silence it. No hesitation, no groaning, just the practiced motion of a man who had been waking before dawn for 38 years. His eyes opened to the ceiling of his small apartment, the same ceiling he had stared at for 4 years now, ever since Margaret passed. The bed felt too big, it always did. He sat up slowly, feeling the protest in his lower back, the stiffness in his knees. 64 years of wear and tear. The body kept score even when the mind tried to forget. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat there for a moment in the gray pre-dawn light filtering through the curtains. On the nightstand, Margaret smiled at him from a silver frame. 20 years younger in that photo, her hair caught by summer wind, her eyes bright with life. Wyatt looked at her every morning. Sometimes he talked to her. Today he just nodded a small acknowledgement and stood. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. He walked to the bathroom and the floorboards creaking under his weight. The mirror showed him what he already knew. Gray hair thinning at the temples, lines etched deep around his eyes and mouth. The face of a man who had seen too much and said too little. He ran water, splashed it on his face, felt the cold shock wake him fully. In the kitchen, he started the coffee maker. The familiar gurgle and hiss. While it brewed, he moved to the small dining table where his phone sat charging. He picked it up, checked the screen. No messages, no missed calls. Yesterday had been his 64th birthday. He had waited all day for Lila to call. His daughter, his only child. She lived in Boston now, a different world from Portland. Different life, different priorities. The phone had stayed silent. Wyatt set it down and poured his coffee. Black, no sugar. He stood by the window looking out at the city beginning to wake. Streetlights still glowing. A few cars passing below. Somewhere out there, people were starting their days with purpose, with plans, with people who remembered their birthdays. He took a long sip and let the bitterness settle on his tongue. On the wall, his police uniform hung on a hook, pressed and ready. 38 years he had worn that uniform. 38 years of service. In 8 months, he would turn it in for the last time. Retirement. The word felt hollow, empty. What did a man do when the only thing that gave his life structure disappeared? Margaret had always said they would travel, see the country, visit national parks, all the things they never had time for. But Margaret was gone, and Wyatt was still here counting down the days to a future he could not picture. He finished his coffee and got dressed. The routine was automatic. Pants, shirt, belt, badge. Each piece of the uniform a ritual. A transformation from Wyatt the man to Officer Thornton the protector. Except lately he had been wondering who he was protecting, what he was protecting. The city kept moving, whether he was there or not. Criminals got arrested and released. Paperwork piled up and got filed away. Nothing changed. He was invisible. At 6:30, he locked his apartment door and walked down the 3 flights of stairs to the parking lot. His patrol car was waiting. A Ford sedan, nothing fancy. City budget cuts meant the newer cars went to younger officers. Wyatt did not mind. This one ran fine. He drove through the quiet streets toward the precinct, watching the city wake up. Joggers on the sidewalks, delivery trucks making their rounds, the coffee shops opening their lights warm against the morning chill. Portland in early autumn, the air crisp, the leaves just beginning to turn. At 6:45, he pulled into the station parking lot. Inside the precinct was already buzzing. Shift change. Officers coming in and going. The smell of cheap coffee and old paperwork. Wyatt walked through the bullpen toward his desk, nodding at familiar faces. Most did not look up. He was part of the furniture now. Expected, but unremarkable. At the coffee station, Officer Garrett Mills stood talking to 2 younger officers, all of them looking at Mills' phone. "It syncs with your body cam automatically," Mills was saying, enthusiastic, eager. "Uploads to the cloud in real time. You can pull reports right from your phone instead of waiting for IT." The others nodded, impressed. 28 years old Mills, fresh energy, tech savvy, everything Wyatt was not. Wyatt poured himself another cup of coffee and stood there half listening. Cloud uploads, apps, interfaces. The language of policing had changed. He understood the basics, could file his reports digitally when required, but this new world of instant connectivity felt foreign, unnecessary. Mills glanced over and saw him. "Morning, Thornton. You should check this out. Makes everything easier." Wyatt offered a small smile. "I'm sure it does." "Seriously, man, 8 months till retirement, you should at least try some of the new systems. Make your life simpler." 8 months. Everyone kept reminding him, as if he could forget. "I'll stick with what I know," Wyatt said quietly. Mills shrugged, not unkindly, and went back to his demonstration. The younger officers leaned in, absorbed. Wyatt walked away carrying his coffee to his desk. He sat down and powered on his computer. While it loaded, he looked around the bullpen. How many years had he sat at this desk? How many reports had he filed? How many cases closed and forgotten? The computer beeped already. He logged in and started his daily routine. Check emails, review overnight reports, look for any updates on his open cases. There were not many, traffic violations mostly, a vandalism report from last week that would probably go nowhere. Small things, unimportant things. Captain Hendricks emerged from his office, coffee in hand, scanning the room. His eyes landed on Wyatt. "Thornton, got a minute?" Wyatt stood and followed the captain into his office. Hendricks gestured to a chair. Wyatt sat. "How you doing?" Hendricks asked, settling behind his desk. "Fine, sir. Ready for my shift." Hendricks nodded slowly, studying him. 8 months left. Hard to believe. You've been here longer than anyone." "Feels longer some days." A small smile from Hendricks. "You thinking about what comes next, retirement plans?" Wyatt shook his head. "Not really. Haven't given it much thought." That was not entirely true. He had given it plenty of thought. He just had not found any answers. What did a 64-year-old widower with a distant daughter do with his days when the job was gone? "Well, when the time comes, we'll give you a proper send-off," Hendricks said. "You've earned it. 38 years of solid service." Solid service. The words felt like a participation trophy. Showing up was not the same as making a difference. "Thank you, sir." Hendricks leaned back in his chair. "You good for patrol today, Northwest District?" "Yes, sir." "All right. Stay safe out there." Wyatt stood, nodded, and left the office. He returned to his desk, finished his coffee, and gathered his things. Radio, notebook, keys, everything in its place. At 7:15, he was back in his patrol car pulling out of the lot. The morning shift had officially begun. Wyatt drove slowly through the Northwest District, his assigned area. Residential streets, small businesses, coffee shops, and boutiques. This was not the rough part of town. No gang activity, no major crime, just regular people living regular lives. His job here was mostly presence. Be visible, make people feel safe, respond to minor calls, keep the peace. The radio crackled occasionally with chatter from other units. A fender bender on the east side, a noise complaint downtown. Routine, unremarkable. Wyatt turned onto Pike Street, one of the main roads through his district. Morning traffic was building. People heading to work. He watched them through his windshield. Faces behind glass. Everyone in their own world. Their own urgency. He wondered if any of them noticed him. Probably not. A patrol car was just part of the scenery. Background noise. Like a stoplight or a mailbox. At 7:40, dispatch crackled through his radio. "All units quiet morning. No major incidents, stay alert and available." Wyatt picked up the handset. "Unit 12, copy that." Quiet mornings, those used to make him uneasy. 38 years on the force had taught him that silence often preceded chaos. But lately, quiet mornings just felt empty. Nothing to respond to, nothing to fix. Just hours to fill until the shift ended. He parked his car near a small plaza and decided to do a walking patrol. Get out, stretch his legs, be visible. The morning air was cool and fresh. He locked the car and started walking down the sidewalk. A few people passed, a jogger with headphones, a woman walking a small dog, a man carrying a briefcase talking on his phone. None of them made eye contact. Wyatt walked slowly, observing. Old habits. Notice everything. The broken window on the corner store, probably from last week. The graffiti on the mailbox, fresh. The smell of coffee from the cafe across the street. He glanced at his watch. 7:45. And that was when he heard it. A sound, faint but distinct, barking, not aggressive, not frightened, just insistent, persistent, coming from somewhere behind him. Wyatt stopped and turned. The street stretched behind him, mostly empty. A few parked cars, a delivery truck unloading boxes. And there in the middle of the intersection, about 30 feet away, a small dog. No, not small. A puppy, young, golden fur with hints of brown, floppy ears, one folded oddly, standing right in the middle of the crosswalk as cars began to approach. Wyatt's instincts kicked in immediately. He moved toward the intersection, raising his hand to slow the oncoming traffic. A sedan stopped, then a pickup truck. The drivers looked annoyed but waited. Wyatt walked into the street and approached the puppy. It did not run, did not cower, just stood there looking directly at him. Up close, Wyatt could see it more clearly. Maybe 7 or 8 months old. Golden retriever mix probably. Fur slightly dirty, one ear that refused to stand up properly, giving it a lopsided, almost comical appearance. But its eyes were sharp, focused. "Hey there, buddy," Wyatt said, his voice gentle. "You're going to get yourself killed standing here." He bent down slowly, hands out, non-threatening. The puppy watched him but did not move. Wyatt scooped it up carefully, feeling the warmth of its small body against his chest. It was heavier than it looked. Solid. He carried it to the sidewalk, waving the waiting cars through. They passed quickly, the moment of inconvenience already forgotten. Wyatt set the puppy down on the concrete and knelt beside it. "Where's your owner, huh?" The puppy sat tail wagging slightly, looking up at him. Around its neck was a simple collar, blue nylon. Wyatt turned it gently, looking for tags. There, a small metal tag with engraved text, Scout, and below that a phone number. Wyatt pulled out his phone and dialed. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "Hi, this is Kate Brennan. I can't come to the phone right now, but please leave a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." A woman's voice, older, warm. The beep sounded. "This is Officer Wyatt Thornton with the Portland Police. I have your dog, Scout. Found him in the street near Pike and 14th. Please call me back at this number when you get this message. I'll stay with him until I hear from you." He ended the call and looked down at Scout. "Right, boy. Let's get you off the street while we wait for your owner." Wyatt stood and started walking back toward his patrol car. He expected Scout to follow. Dogs usually did, but when he glanced back, the puppy had not moved. It sat exactly where Wyatt had left it, staring at him. Wyatt stopped. "Come on, this way." Scout did not move, just kept staring, intense, unblinking. Wyatt walked back and bent down again. "What's wrong? You hurt?" He ran his hands gently over Scout's body, checking for injuries. No cuts, no blood, no obvious pain. The puppy sat still, allowing the examination, but never looked away from Wyatt's face. "You seem fine, so let's go." Wyatt straightened and walked a few steps. Again he looked back. Scout had stood up now, but still had not followed. Instead, the puppy turned slightly, looking in the opposite direction. Down the street, away from where Wyatt wanted to go. "No, boy. Wrong way. Come on." Scout looked back at Wyatt, then back down the street, then back at Wyatt. It was strange behavior, off. Wyatt had seen plenty of lost dogs over the years. They were usually scared, confused, looking for familiar territory. They wandered aimlessly or cowered when approached. This dog was doing neither. Wyatt tried once more. Scout, come. He used his command voice, firm but not harsh, the voice that made people listen. Scout sat down and kept staring. Wyatt felt a flicker of frustration. He did not have time for this. He needed to get the dog secured and continue his patrol. But as he stood there looking at this stubborn puppy, something else stirred. Curiosity. Why was this dog acting this way? He walked back over and knelt down one more time. All right, I get it. You don't know me, but I'm trying to help. Scout's tail wagged once, twice, but the dog did not move toward Wyatt. Instead, it stood and took 2 steps in the opposite direction, then stopped, turned its head back toward Wyatt, and waited. Wyatt frowned. What are you doing? Scout took 2 more steps away, then looked back again. A pattern, deliberate. Wyatt glanced at his watch. 7:50. He looked around the street. No one was paying attention. The morning rush continued around them indifferent. He made a decision. Fine, let's try it your way. He followed Scout. The puppy immediately started walking, not running, just a steady trot down the sidewalk. Every 10 feet or so, Scout would stop and look back, making sure Wyatt was still following. They walked for about a block. Then Scout stopped, completely sitting down on the concrete, staring at Wyatt again. Wyatt stopped too. What now? The dog just stared. Wyatt sighed. This was ridiculous. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar he had stashed there earlier. He tore open the wrapper and broke off a piece. Here, you must be hungry. He held it out. Scout sniffed the air, but did not move toward the food. Did not even look at it. Just kept staring at Wyatt. Come on, it's food. You're a duh. Dogs eat. He placed the piece on the ground between them and stepped back, giving Scout space. The puppy glanced down at the protein bar, sniffed once, then looked back up at Wyatt, and did not eat. Wyatt felt something shift in his chest. A small alarm, a whisper of wrongness. Stray dogs always ate. Hungry or not, they took food when offered. It was instinct, survival. But Scout was not interested in the food, not even a little. This dog wanted something else. Wyatt watched as Scout stood again and walked a few more steps down the sidewalk, then stopped and looked back. The same pattern, the same deliberate motion. You're trying to show me something, Wyatt said quietly. Scout's tail wagged. Wyatt looked at his watch again. 8 o'clock. He had been off his patrol route for 15 minutes. He should call this in, call animal control. Get back to work. But he did not. Instead, he followed. They walked together for another 10 minutes, Scout leading, Wyatt following. The puppy moved with purpose now. No hesitation, turning houses with confidence, checking regularly to make sure Wyatt was still behind. They left the main streets and entered a more residential area. Older houses, quiet streets, fewer people. Scout's pace increased slightly, and Wyatt had to walk faster to keep up. The puppy led him down an alley between 2 apartment buildings, narrow, shadowed, the kind of place Wyatt would normally approach with caution. But Scout moved through it without fear, emerging on the other side into a small parking lot. And there Scout stopped. The puppy sat down, staring at something on the ground near a chain-link fence. Wyatt approached slowly, his eyes scanning the area. Nothing seemed out of place. Just an empty lot, some trash, weeds growing through cracks in the concrete. Then he saw it. Caught on the chain-link fence, fluttering slightly in the breeze, was a piece of fabric. Blue, soft, a scarf or part of one. The color was vibrant, fresh, not faded by sun or weather. Wyatt knelt down and carefully pulled it free. The fabric was torn, ripped along one edge, as if it had been caught and yanked away. He held it up, examining it. This was recent, very recent. He looked at Scout. The puppy was watching him, tail wagging slowly. Where did this come from, boy? Scout stood and walked to another part of the fence, sniffing the ground. Wyatt followed and saw something else. Tire tracks. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt near the fence. And next to them, the ground was disturbed, scuffed, like something had been dragged. Wyatt's training kicked in. He pulled out his phone and took photos. The scarf, the tire tracks, the disturbed ground. Then he bagged the scarf in an evidence bag he always carried. This was not random. Something had happened here. He looked at Scout, who was now moving again, heading toward the far corner of the lot. What else you got to show me? The puppy led him to a dumpster. Behind it, partially hidden, was a woman's purse. Wyatt's pulse quickened. He put on gloves and carefully picked it up. The purse was open, its contents spilled across the ground. Lipstick, keys, a pack of tissues, and a wallet. He opened the wallet. Inside was a driver's license. Catherine Brennan, age 67, address listed in Outer Portland. The same voice from the phone, the same name on Scout's tag. Wyatt stared at the license photo. An older woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a loose bun. She looked like someone's grandmother, someone's friend, and her purse was here dumped behind a dumpster in an empty parking lot. Wyatt stood slowly, his mind racing. He pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need you to run a welfare check on a Catherine Brennan." He gave the address from the license. "Also need you to check for any calls or reports associated with that name or address this morning." There was a pause. Then the dispatcher's voice came back. "Stand by Unit 12. Wyatt looked around the lot again. No signs of struggle beyond the scuffed ground. No blood. No obvious evidence of violence, but the purse, the scarf, the tire tracks. Something had happened. The radio crackled. "Unit 12, we show a welfare check was already requested this morning at 0647 hours. Officers responded to the address. No answer at the door. Residents appeared secure. No signs of distress. Marked as possible accidental dial." Wyatt's jaw tightened. What kind of call was it? 911 call. Caller did not speak. Line disconnected after approximately 3 seconds. A silent 911 call at 6:47 in the morning. An hour ago, Wyatt looked down at Scout. The puppy was sitting again, staring at him with those intense eyes. "She called for help," Wyatt said quietly. "Didn't she?" Scout's tail wagged once. Wyatt's chest tightened. This was not a lost dog. This was not a coincidence. He keyed his radio again. "Dispatch, I have evidence suggesting Catherine Brennan may be in distress. I found her personal belongings abandoned in a parking lot, signs of possible struggle. Requesting backup to my location and immediate follow-up at her residence." "Copy Unit 12. What is your current location?" Wyatt gave the cross streets. "Backup is en route. ETA 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Wyatt looked at Scout. The puppy was not sitting anymore. It was standing, staring off toward the edge of the parking lot, toward a narrow path that led into a wooded area. Forest Park, one of the largest urban forests in the country, miles and miles of trails and dense trees. If someone was in there injured, lost, they could disappear completely. Scout took a few steps toward the path, then looked back at Wyatt. The message was clear. "She's this way." Wyatt's mind raced. Protocol said wait for backup. Don't go into unknown situations alone. But protocol also said respond to emergencies immediately when lives were at risk. And something told him time mattered. He looked at Scout again. The puppy's body language had changed. More urgent now, more agitated, small whines escaping its throat. Wyatt made his decision. He keyed his radio one more time. "Radio 1, dispatch, I'm proceeding toward Forest Park area. Subject's dog is leading me. Will update as I can." Unit 12 advised, "You wait for backup." "Acknowledged, but I have reason to believe subject may be in immediate danger. I'm moving now." He did not wait for a response. He clipped the radio back to his belt and looked at Scout. "All right, boy, show me where she is." Scout immediately turned and ran toward the path. Wyatt followed, his hand instinctively checking his service weapon, his phone, his radio. Everything was in place. But as he entered the tree line and the city sounds began to fade behind him, he felt the weight of what he was doing. He was 64 years old, 8 months from retirement, following a dog into the woods, based on nothing but instinct and a few pieces of circumstantial evidence. If he was wrong, he would look like a fool. But if he was right, someone's life depended on him not walking away. The path was narrow and uneven. Roots crossed it like veins. Branches hung low, forcing Wyatt to duck. Scout moved ahead with confidence, navigating the terrain easily, but Wyatt had to watch his footing. The trees grew denser. The morning light filtered through the canopy in scattered patches. Birds called overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a creek babbled, and the city disappeared. They were alone now, just Wyatt, Scout, in the forest. Scout did not slow down. The puppy moved with purpose, occasionally stopping to sniff the ground, then continuing him forward, always checking to make sure Wyatt was following. Wyatt's breathing grew heavier. His knees protested with each step. He was not built for this anymore, not in the shape he used to be. But he pushed forward, driven by something he could not quite name. After about 15 minutes, the path began to climb. A hill, steep and rocky. Scout scrambled up without hesitation, but Wyatt had to use his hands, grabbing exposed roots and rocks to pull himself upward. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air. His chest burned. His legs ached. But he did not stop. At the top of the hill, the path leveled out again. Wyatt paused, catching his breath, looking around. The forest stretched in all directions, thick, endless. If Catherine Brennan was out here somewhere, how would anyone find her? Scout barked once. Sharp, urgent. Wyatt looked ahead. The puppy had stopped about 20 feet down the path, sitting and staring at something off to the side. Wyatt walked over, following Scout's gaze. There on a low bush was another piece of fabric. Blue, same color as the scarf. He pulled it free, examined it. Definitely the same material. Torn, caught on the branches. She had come this way. Scout moved again, leading him off the main path, now into denser undergrowth. The terrain became rougher. No clear trail, just trees and bushes and rocks. Wyatt pushed through branches, scraping his uniform thorns, catching on his sleeves. Scout moved ahead, weaving between obstacles with ease. And then the puppy stopped completely. Scout sat down, ears forward, body tense, staring at something ahead. Wyatt approached carefully. His hand moved to his radio, ready to call it in. But when he saw what Scout was staring at, his breath caught. The ground dropped away, sharply. An embankment steep and rocky, falling at least 40 feet down into a ravine below. And along the edge, the earth was disturbed, freshly disturbed. Rocks dislodged, broken branches, scuff marks in the dirt. Someone had fallen here. Wyatt dropped to his knees and peered over the edge. The slope was treacherous, loose rocks and slick moss. At the bottom, dense vegetation made it impossible to see clearly. But there was something down there. He could feel it. Scout whimpered beside him, pacing back and forth along the edge, looking down, then back at Wyatt. I know, boy. I know. Wyatt pulled out his radio, his hand shaking slightly. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've located what appears to be a fall site in Forest Park. Steep embankment, signs of recent disturbance. I believe subject Catherine Brennan may have fallen. I need search and rescue immediately. Coordinates to follow. He fumbled with his phone, pulling up the GPS app, waiting for it to lock onto his location. The signal was weak here, but after a moment it found him. He relayed the coordinates to dispatch. Copy Unit 12. Search and rescue is being mobilized. ETA approximately 25 minutes. Do you have visual on the subject? Wyatt looked over the edge again. The vegetation below was too thick. Negative. I cannot see from this position. I'm going to attempt descent. Unit 12 advise against solo descent. Wait for search and rescue. Dispatch of subject has been down there since the 911 call at 0647. That's over 2 hours. If she's injured, every minute counts. A pause. Your call, Unit 12. Proceed with extreme caution. Wyatt clipped the radio back and looked at Scout. Stay here, boy. I'll find her. But Scout was already moving, scrambling down the embankment, half sliding, half climbing, using instinct and four legs to navigate what Wyatt would have to do with two. Scout wait. But the puppy did not wait. Within seconds, Scout was 20 feet down, moving steadily toward the bottom. Wyatt cursed under his breath. He looked at the steep slope. At his age, with his knees. This was insane. But he thought of the woman's face on the driver's license. Catherine Brennan, 67 years old, alone in the woods, injured, scared. He thought of Margaret, how she died alone in a hospital room while he finished a shift because someone had to cover. He thought of Lila, who had stopped calling because he was always working, always unavailable. He thought of 38 years of invisible service, and he started climbing down. The first step down was the hardest. Wyatt's boot slid on loose gravel, and for a heart-stopping moment, he felt himself tipping forward. His hand shot out, grabbing an exposed root. It held, barely. He steadied himself, breathing hard, and looked down the slope. 40 feet, maybe more, at an angle that made every step a gamble. Scout was already halfway down, moving with the easy confidence of youth and four-legged balance. The puppy looked back once as if to say, "Hurry up," then continued descending. Wyatt took another step, then another. His fingers dug into the dirt, finding handholds in roots and rocks. His knees protested with each movement, old injuries flaring. The slope was slick with morning dew and moss, treacherous. He tried not to think about what would happen if he fell. 64-year-old bones did not bounce back the way they used to. One wrong move, and he would be the one needing rescue. But he kept going. A rock came loose under his foot. He slid several feet before catching himself on a small tree. The bark bit into his palm. He held on, waiting for his heart to stop hammering. Below him, Scout had reached the bottom and was pacing back and forth, whimpering. "I'm coming," Wyatt muttered through gritted teeth. "Just give me a minute." He repositioned his feet and continued down. The slope seemed to go on forever. Every muscle in his body screamed. His hands were scraped raw. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool air. Halfway down, he grabbed what looked like a solid branch. It snapped. Wyatt fell. Not far, maybe 6 feet, but he hit the ground hard, rolling, unable to stop himself. Rocks and roots punched into his ribs, his shoulders, his back. He threw out his hands, trying to grab anything, and finally caught hold of another root. He stopped rolling, hung there for a moment, gasping, his entire body screaming in pain. Above him, his radio crackled. A voice faint and distant. He could not make out the words. Below him, Scout barked, urgent, desperate. Wyatt pulled himself up slowly, checked himself for serious injury. His ribs ached, his hands were bleeding. His left knee felt like someone had driven a spike through it. But nothing was broken. Nothing that would stop him. He looked down. 20 feet to go. He kept climbing. By the time he reached the bottom, his legs were shaking. He stood on solid ground and had to lean against a tree to keep from collapsing. His breath came in ragged gasps. His vision swam. Scout was beside him, immediately pressing against his leg, then pulling away, running a few feet ahead, looking back. Not done yet. Keep moving. Wyatt straightened, forced himself to focus. He was down. Now what? The bottom of the ravine was dense with vegetation. Ferns and undergrowth tangled together, making it hard to see more than a few feet in any direction. A small creek ran nearby, the water gurgling over rocks. Scout was already pushing through the ferns, moving deeper into the thicket. Wyatt followed, pushing branches aside, stepping over fallen logs. The ground here was softer, muddy in places. He tried to move quietly, but his boots squelched with each step. And then Scout stopped. The puppy stood completely still, ears forward, body rigid, staring at something hidden in the undergrowth ahead. Wyatt approached slowly. His hand moved instinctively to his service weapon, though he did not draw it. He did not know what he was walking into. Injured hiker. Something worse, he moved around a large fern and saw her. Catherine Brennan lay on her side, partially hidden by a fallen log. Her body was twisted at an unnatural angle. Her face was pale, almost gray. Blood had dried in her hair dark against the silver strands. She was not moving. Wyatt's training kicked in instantly. He dropped to his knees beside her, fingers going to her neck, searching for a pulse. For 3 terrible seconds, he felt nothing. Then there, faint, irregular. But there, she was alive. "Catherine," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Can you hear me? My name is Officer Wyatt Thornton. You're going to be okay." No response. Her eyes were closed, her breathing so shallow he could barely see her chest rise. Wyatt did a quick visual assessment. Head wound significant. Bleeding had stopped, but the injury looked serious. Her left leg was bent at a wrong angle, broken definitely. Her skin was cold to the touch. Hypothermia was setting in. How long had she been here? He pulled out his radio. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline and exhaustion combining. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've located Catherine Brennan. Female 67, unconscious, significant head trauma, suspected broken leg, possible hypothermia. She's alive but critical. I need medical evac immediately." The response came quickly, professional, and calm. "Copy Unit 12. Medical helicopter is being dispatched. ETA 12 minutes. Can you provide updated coordinates?" Wyatt looked at his phone, still had signal barely. He read off the GPS coordinates. "Received. Air rescue is en route. Maintain position and monitor subject. Backup officers are also en route to your last known position at the top of the embankment." "Understood. Be advised terrain is extremely difficult. Subject is at the bottom of a steep ravine. Helicopter extraction will be necessary." "Copy that. Stay with her, Thornton. Help is coming." He clipped the radio back and turned his attention to Catherine. She needed warmth. He took off his uniform jacket, heavy and warm, and carefully draped it over her upper body. Her face was so pale, lips slightly blue. "Catherine, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." He placed his hand in hers, waited. Nothing. Scout was beside her now, pressed close against her side, whimpering softly. The puppy licked her face gently as if trying to wake her. Wyatt carefully checked her broken leg. The tibia definitely fractured. He could see the slight misalignment through her pants. Moving her was not an option. He needed to stabilize what he could and wait for professionals. But he could keep her warm. He looked around and spotted several large branches nearby. He broke off smaller pieces and arranged them to create a slight barrier against the wind. It was not much, but it might help. As he worked, he noticed something on the ground near Catherine's hand. A medical alert bracelet. It must have broken off when she fell. He picked it up carefully. The engraving was clear. Heart condition. Below that, keep medication close. Wyatt's chest tightened. Heart condition. Head trauma. Hypothermia. The clock was not just ticking. It was racing. He keyed his radio again. "Dispatch, subject has a medical alert bracelet indicating heart condition. Advise medical evac. This is critical. Time is essential. Copy Unit 12, relaying to air rescue now." Wyatt sat back on his heels, breathing hard. 12 minutes, they had said. 12 minutes until the helicopter arrived. Then however long it took to reach her, stabilize her, lift her out. Would it be fast enough? He looked at Catherine's face. Even unconscious, even injured, there was something peaceful about her features. Gentle, kind. This was someone who smiled easily. Someone who probably baked cookies for neighbors and remembered birthdays. Someone like Margaret. Scout whimpered again, nudging Catherine's hand with his nose. "You did good, boy," Wyatt said quietly. "You found help. You brought me here." The puppy looked at him, and Wyatt saw something in those eyes. Not just animal instinct. Something deeper. Understanding. Love. He reached out and gently examined Scout's collar, looking for any other information that might help medical responders. The collar was simple, blue nylon slightly worn, and on the metal buckle an engraving. Wyatt had to squint to read it in the dim forest light. "To Kate, love always." P. Kate, Catherine, and P, her husband probably. Wyatt looked more closely at Catherine. On her left hand, a simple gold wedding band, still there after all these years. He understood then. Widow, like him. Alone, like him. Finding companionship in unexpected places. He thought about how Scout had found him this morning. Out of all the people on the street, the dog had chosen him. A police officer, yes. Someone in uniform, but more than that, someone who would listen, someone who would care, someone who understood what it meant to be alone. His chest ached. Not from the climb, from something else. Movement caught his eye. Catherine's hand, just a slight twitch. Then her eyelids fluttered. Wyatt leaned closer. Catherine, can you hear me? Her eyes opened slowly, just slits, unfocused, confused. You're safe, Wyatt said. You fell, you're hurt, but help is coming. Just stay still. Her lips moved, no sound at first, then barely a whisper. Scout. The puppy's ears perked up immediately. Scout moved closer, licking her face again, tail wagging frantically. Catherine's hand moved slowly, weakly, reaching for the dog. Scout pressed his head into her palm. A tear rolled down Catherine's cheek. Good boy, she breathed. Such a good boy. Her eyes found Wyatt's face, trying to focus, trying to understand. You're going to be okay, Wyatt told her. My name is Wyatt. I'm a police officer. Your dog found me. He led me here. You're going to be fine. Scout went for help. Yes, he didn't give up. Ran all the way into the city. Found me and wouldn't let me ignore him. Smart dog. Another tear. This one might have been relief or gratitude or just exhaustion. Hurt, she whispered. I know, don't move. Helicopter is coming. Just a few more minutes. Her breathing was labored. Each breath seemed to cost her. Cold. I know, I've got my jacket on you. Stay as still as you can. Her eyes closed again. For a moment, Wyatt thought she had lost consciousness, but then she spoke again, so quietly he almost missed it. Thank you. Those two words hit him harder than the fall down the embankment had. Simple, honest, grateful. When was the last time someone had thanked him? Really thanked him. Not just a reflexive politeness, but genuine gratitude. He could not remember. In the distance, a sound, faint but growing louder, the distinctive thump of helicopter rotors. You hear that? Wyatt said. That's your ride. Stay with me, Catherine, just a little longer. Scout's ears swiveled toward the sound. The puppy looked up, then back at Catherine, then at Wyatt, anxious, protective. The sound grew louder, closer. The trees above them began to sway as the helicopter approached. Birds scattered, calling out in alarm. Wyatt's radio crackled. Unit 12, this is Air Rescue 1. We have visual on your location. Be advised we cannot land in your position. Heavy vegetation. We're going to have to use a hoist. Do you copy? Wyatt grabbed his radio. Copy Air Rescue. Subject is stable but critical. Heart condition, head trauma, broken leg, hypothermia. She's conscious but weak. Understood. See, we're deploying paramedics now. Stand by. The helicopter appeared overhead, hovering. The rotor wash sent leaves and debris swirling. The noise was deafening. Scout pressed closer to Catherine, frightened by the sound, but refusing to leave her side. Wyatt saw movement above, a rescue basket being lowered on a cable, a paramedic riding it down. The basket swayed as it descended, the cable spinning slowly. It took nearly 2 minutes for the basket to reach the ground. The paramedic, a woman in her 30s with short dark hair, unhooked herself immediately and rushed over. I'm Sarah with Air Rescue, she said, her voice professional and calm, despite having to shout over the helicopter noise. What's her condition? Wyatt quickly briefed her on everything he had observed. Sarah nodded already, assessing Catherine, checking vitals, examining injuries. A second paramedic was being lowered now, bringing more equipment. Good work getting to her, Sarah said as she worked. She's hypothermic, BP is low, but you kept her warm. That probably saved her life. The second paramedic, a younger man, landed and brought over a backboard and medical kit. Together, they moved with practiced efficiency. I have started. Oxygen mask. Careful stabilization of the broken leg. Neck brace secured. Scout watched it all, whimpering, trying to stay close without getting in the way. Throughout it all, Catherine remained conscious, her eyes tracking the activity around her. When Sarah placed the oxygen mask over her face, Catherine's hand moved weakly towards Scout again. The dog, she tried to say through the mask. Scout. Sarah glanced at the puppy, then at Wyatt. Is this her dog? Yes, he's the one who led me here. Sarah nodded. We'll make sure he's taken care of, but we need to get her out now. Can you hold the dog? Wyatt reached for Scout, but the puppy resisted, trying to stay with Catherine. Scout, Catherine said, her voice muffled by the mask. It's okay, go with him. The dog hesitated, then allowed Wyatt to pick him up. Scout was heavier than he looked, solid muscle under the fur. The puppy trembled in Wyatt's arms, but did not struggle. The paramedics carefully lifted Catherine onto the backboard. Every movement was precise, controlled. They strapped her in securely, preparing her for the ascent. Sarah keyed her radio. Air Rescue 1 subject is secured, ready for extraction. The basket was repositioned. Getting Catherine into it took careful coordination. Once she was secured, Sarah climbed in beside her, continuing to monitor vitals. Lifting now, came the voice from above. The cable went taut. The basket began to rise. Scout barked once, sharp and desperate, watching Catherine being lifted away. Wyatt held the dog firmly but gently. She's going to be okay, he said. They'll take good care of her. The basket rose slowly, swaying in the rotor wash. 20 feet. 30. Catherine's face grew smaller, harder to see. The second paramedic, still on the ground, was packing up the remaining equipment. You need a ride out, he asked Wyatt, or can you make it back up on your own? Wyatt looked at the embankment he had climbed down. His entire body ached. His knee throbbed. His hands were raw. I'll take the ride, he said. The paramedic grinned. Smart choice. Most guys your age try to prove something. Then we end up extracting them, too. Within minutes, the basket was being lowered again. Wyatt climbed in, still holding Scout. The paramedics secured them both. Ready when you are, he called up. The ascent was surreal. Wyatt held Scout close as they rose through the trees. The forest floor dropped away below them. The helicopter noise filled everything. Wind battered them. Scout pressed his face against Wyatt's chest, trembling, but trusting. When they reached the helicopter door, hands pulled them in. The interior was bright and clinical. Catherine lay strapped to a gurney, Sarah working over her with equipment Wyatt did not recognize. The helicopter banked, turning toward the city. Through the window, Wyatt could see Forest Park spreading out below, vast and green. Somewhere down there was the path he had walked, the embankment he had climbed down. He had done it. Against all odds, against all reason, he had found her. Scout squirmed in his arms, trying to see Catherine. Wyatt shifted position so the dog could see her. Catherine's eyes were closed now, but her chest rose and fell steadily with the oxygen. Monitors beeped rhythmically. Sarah looked up and gave Wyatt a small nod. She's stable, for now. The flight to the hospital took less than 10 minutes. Wyatt had driven those same roads countless times over his career. At ground level, it would have taken 30 minutes in traffic. Up here, the city passed beneath them in a blur. When they landed on the hospital roof, a team was waiting. They pulled Catherine's gurney out, immediately rushing her toward the doors. Sarah went with them, still monitoring, still working. Wyatt climbed out more slowly, his body protesting every movement. Scout remained in his arms. An ER nurse approached. Sir, you need to come inside. You're injured. Wyatt looked down at himself. His uniform was torn and muddy. His hands were bleeding. His knee had swollen visibly. I'm fine. You're not fine. You need to be checked out. Doctor's orders. Before he could protest, another voice cut in. Thornton. Wyatt turned. Officer Garrett Mills was running across the helipad, slightly out of breath. Man, you scared the hell out of everyone. Captain heard you went down that embankment. Are you crazy? Despite everything, Wyatt felt a small smile tug at his lips. Probably. Mills looked at Scout in Wyatt's arms. The dog that started all this. Yeah, Scout. He knew exactly where she was. Mills shook his head in disbelief. Unbelievable. Come on, let's get you checked out. I'll take the dog. No. Wyatt said the word coming out sharper than he intended. He stays with me. Mills raised his hands. Okay, okay. He stays with you. The nurse led them inside. The hospital was a flurry of activity, doctors and nurses moving with purpose, machines beeping, announcements over the PA system, the smell of antiseptic and floor cleaner. They took Wyatt to a treatment room. The nurse cleaned his hands, put antiseptic on the scrapes, examined his knee. Nothing broken, just badly bruised. She gave him ice and ibuprofen. Through it all, Scout sat on the floor beside him watching the door, waiting. Mills stood against the wall, arms crossed. So what now, he asked. Now we wait, Wyatt said. See if she makes it. Captain wants a full report when you're up for it, but he also said, and I quote, good work. Wyatt nodded absently. His mind was not on reports or captains. It was on the woman being worked on somewhere in this building. Catherine Brennan, 67 years old, widow, heart condition, alone except for a dog who refused to give up on her. Mills, Wyatt said quietly. Yeah, if Scout hadn't found me, if I'd called animal control like I should have, if I'd ignored him and just done my job the normal way. But you didn't, Mills interrupted. You listened. You followed your gut. You saved her life. He saved her life, Wyatt corrected, looking down at Scout. I just finally paid attention. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Wyatt's phone rang. He pulled it out. Unknown number. Thornton? A woman's voice, young and worried. Is this Officer Thornton, the one who found my aunt? Wyatt sat up straighter. Yes. Who is this? My name is Rachel. Rachel Morrison. Catherine Brennan is my aunt. The hospital called me. They said she's in surgery. They said you saved her life. I just found her. The dog did the rest. Scout. Yes, they mentioned him. Is he okay? Wyatt looked down at the puppy still sitting vigilantly by his side. He's fine. Exhausted. His paws are pretty torn up from running. But he's okay. A sound on the other end. Relief or tears or both. Thank God. Thank you, officer. I'm on my way from Seattle. I'll be there in 3 hours. Can you stay with Scout until I get there? Wyatt did not hesitate. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. She hung up. Wyatt set his phone down and looked at Mills. I'm staying. Mills nodded. I'll let Captain know and Thornton. Yeah. That was good police work today. Old school. Trusting your instincts. Following the evidence, even when the evidence was a dupe. He smiled. They don't teach that at the academy. Mills left. Wyatt was alone with Scout in the small treatment room. The adrenaline was wearing off now. Exhaustion settled in like a heavy blanket. His entire body ached. His hands throbbed. His knee felt like it was on fire. But he had found her. Catherine Brennan was alive because he had listened to a stubborn puppy who refused to give up. Scout put his head on Wyatt's foot and sighed deeply. Wyatt reached down and gently scratched behind the dog's ears. You did good, boy. Real good. It was nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the doctor finally appeared. Wyatt had been dozing in the chair for the past hour, waking periodically when nurses came and went. Scout never moved from his spot by Wyatt's feet. The doctor was an older man with a gray beard and tired eyes. He stepped into the doorway and looked at Wyatt. Officer Thornton. Wyatt stood immediately, ignoring the protest from his knee. Yes, how is she? The doctor stepped into the room. Catherine Brennan is out of surgery. We repaired the leg. The head injury was significant, but we've stabilized her. The hypothermia was our biggest concern, but her core temperature is coming back up. Is she going to make it? The doctor paused. The next 24 hours are critical. She has a pre-existing heart condition which complicates things, but he smiled slightly. She's a fighter, and she had help from a very determined dog and you. Relief flooded through Wyatt so intense it made his knees weak. He sat back down. Can I see her? She's in ICU, unconscious. But yes, briefly. An officer? The doctor's expression grew more serious. If you'd found her even an hour later, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You saved her life. The doctor left. Wyatt sat there, the words sinking in. 1 hour later, that was the difference. 1 hour and Catherine Brennan would have died alone in those woods. No one knowing where she was, no one finding her in time. But Scout had known. Scout had refused to give up, had run miles into the city, had chosen Wyatt out of everyone on the street, had led him back through that maze of streets and trails and finally down that impossible embankment. One dog, one morning, one choice to listen instead of walking away. Wyatt looked down at Scout. The puppy's eyes were closing, exhausted beyond measure, but still there, still waiting. Come here, boy. Scout lifted his head. Wyatt patted his lap. The dog hesitated, then carefully climbed up, curling into as small a ball as his gangly puppy body would allow. Wyatt wrapped his arms around him gently. And for the first time in 4 years since Margaret died, Wyatt Thornton felt like he had done something that truly mattered. Wyatt sat in that small treatment room for another hour, Scout sleeping in his lap, the weight of the dog, warm and steady against his chest. The hospital moved around him with its own rhythm. Footsteps in hallways, distant voices, the beep and hum of machines keeping people alive. His phone buzzed, a text from Mills. Captain says take the rest of the day, get some rest, report tomorrow. Wyatt typed back a simple acknowledgement and set the phone aside. Rest, as if his mind would allow that, as if he could close his eyes and not see Catherine Brennan's pale face, her twisted body at the bottom of that ravine, as if he could forget how close it had been. A nurse appeared in the doorway, young woman with kind eyes and purple scrubs. Officer Thornton, Mrs. Brennan is awake. She's asking for you. Wyatt gently shifted Scout off his lap. The puppy woke immediately, alert, watching. Can he come? The nurse glanced at Scout, then at Wyatt's face. Whatever she saw there made her decide. Officially, no. Unofficially, she smiled. I didn't see a dog. Wyatt stood slowly, his body stiff and aching. Scout jumped down and stayed close to his leg as they followed the nurse through the corridors. The ICU was quiet, dimly lit. Most of the rooms had their curtains drawn. Privacy for healing, privacy for dying. The nurse stopped at a room near the end. Through the window, Wyatt could see Catherine in the bed. Bandaged head, AV lines running from her arms, monitors tracking her vital signs and glowing numbers. But her eyes were open. 10 minutes, the nurse said softly. She needs rest. Wyatt nodded and pushed open the door. Catherine turned her head slightly at the sound. When she saw him, recognition flickered across her face. Then her gaze dropped to Scout, and her expression transformed. Pain and exhaustion gave way to pure relief. Scout, she whispered. The puppy needed no invitation. He went straight to her bedside, standing on his hind legs, front paws carefully placed on the edge of the bed. Not jumping, not rough, just there, present. Catherine's hand moved slowly toward him. Scout licked her fingers gently. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Wyatt stood near the foot of the bed, suddenly uncertain. This was their moment. He was just the delivery system. But Catherine's eyes found his. You came. Yes, ma'am. The nurse said you're the one who found me, who climbed down. Scout found you. I just followed. She shook her head slightly, then winced at the movement. No, Scout brought you to me, but you chose to follow. You could have walked away. The words hung in the air between them. True words. Wyatt had almost walked away, almost called animal control and gone back to his patrol, almost dismissed the whole thing as a waste of time. I'm glad I didn't, he said quietly. Catherine's hand continued to stroke Scout's head. The monitor beside her bed showed her heart rate, elevated but steady. She was weak, but she was here. They told me what happened, she said. I don't remember most of it. I remember hiking, Scout chasing a squirrel, then stepping on something loose, falling, hitting my head. She closed her eyes briefly. I remember being cold, so cold and scared. I managed to call 911, but my phone fell. I couldn't reach it. You sent Scout for help. She opened her eyes again. I didn't think it would work. I couldn't die there without trying something, so I told him to go find someone. Anyone. Her voice cracked. And he found you. Wyatt pulled a chair closer and sat down. His knee thanked him. Tell me about him. About Scout. Catherine's expression softened into something like a smile. I got him from the shelter 6 months ago. He was scheduled to be euthanized. Nobody wanted him. Too energetic, too big, too much work. She paused. I went in looking for a small, quiet dog. Something easy. And I saw this gangly puppy with one ear that wouldn't stand upright, and he looked at me like he knew me, like he'd been waiting. Wyatt understood that look. He had seen it this morning. You saved him, he said. We saved each other. Catherine's hands stilled on Scout's head. After my husband Patrick died, I didn't think I wanted to keep living. Not really, just going through motions. Then Scout came along and suddenly I had a reason to get up in the morning. Someone who needed me. Someone who looked at me like I mattered. The words hit Wyatt in the chest, going through motions. Someone who looked at you like you mattered. He knew exactly what that felt like. I understand, he said. Catherine studied his face. Even weak and injured, her eyes were sharp, perceptive. You're alone too. I can see it. Wyatt nodded slowly. My wife Margaret passed 4 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. Thank you. It changed things. Changed me. Children. A daughter. Lila. She lives in Boston. We don't talk much anymore. I was always working, always busy. By the time I realized I should make more time, she'd already built a life that didn't include me. He looked down at his hands. That's my fault. It's never too late, Catherine said softly, to reach out, to tree, maybe. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Scout had settled down, his head resting on the edge of the bed, eyes half closed, content now that both his people were in the same room. The doctor said you're retiring soon, Catherine said. 8 months. How did he know that? Small talk while they were patching me up. He was impressed, said most officers your age would have waited for backup. Wyatt shrugged. Most officers my age would have been smarter. Or less brave. I'm not brave. I couldn't walk away. Catherine watched him carefully. Why not? The question was simple. The answer was not. Wyatt looked at Scout, at Catherine, at the monitors, keeping track of her fragile life. He thought about this morning, about standing on that sidewalk, watching a puppy refuse to give up, about the choice he had made. Because I've spent 38 years being invisible, he said finally. Doing my job, following the rules, being professional and distant and forgettable. And this morning, this dog looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. Like I was the only one who could help. And I realized, he stopped searching for words. I realized I was tired of being invisible, tired of going through motions. So when Scout asked me to follow him, really asked, I decided to say yes. Catherine's eyes were wet again. That's not invisible. That's being seen. Really seen. Before Wyatt could respond, his phone rang. He pulled it out, intending to silence it, then saw the caller ID Lila. His heart jumped. He looked at Catherine apologetically. I need to take this. She nodded. Of course. Wyatt stood and walked toward the door, answering as he went. Lila. Dad. Her voice was tight with emotion. Dad, what happened? I got a call from a hospital in Portland saying you were involved in some kind of rescue, that you climbed down a cliff, that you were in Europe. Are you okay? Wyatt stepped into the hallway surprised. I'm fine, just some scrapes and bruises. How did they get your number? They said they called everyone in my contact list trying to reach family. My number was listed as your emergency contact. Dad, they said you saved someone's life. The dog saved her life, I just helped. That's not what the doctor told me. He said if you hadn't gotten to her when you did, she would have died. Lila's voice wavered. Dad, you could have been killed. But I wasn't. You're 64 years old climbing down cliffs. What were you thinking? The concern in her voice, the fear it caught Wyatt off guard. When was the last time Lila had worried about him? I was thinking someone needed help, he said quietly. A long pause on the other end. Then Lila spoke again, softer now. I'm coming to Portland. Tonight. I already booked a flight. Lila, you don't need to. Yes, I do. I should have called yesterday. For your birthday. I should have called a lot of days, but I didn't. And then today, I almost lost you before I could fix that. She took a shaky breath. I'm coming. I'll be there by 8 o'clock tonight. Don't argue with me. Wyatt felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been sealed shut for a very long time. Okay, he said. Okay, I'll pick you up at the airport. No, you'll rest. I'll get a tea, y'all. Just text me where you live. I'm staying with you, whether you like it or not. Despite everything, Wyatt smiled. I like it. Another pause. Softer. I love you, Dad. I should say that more. I love you too, sweetheart. He hung up and stood in the hallway for a moment, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. Lila was coming. His daughter was coming to see him. Not out of obligation or duty, but because she cared. Because she had almost lost him and realized she did not want that. When he returned to Catherine's room, she took one look at his face and smiled knowingly. Good news, Graham. My daughter is flying in tonight from Boston. See, Catherine said. It's never too late. The nurse appeared then, apologetic but firm. I'm sorry, Officer Thornton. She really needs to rest now. Wyatt nodded. He looked at Scout. Come on, boy. We'll come back. But Scout did not want to leave. The puppy pressed closer to Catherine, whimpering softly. It's okay, Catherine told him. Go with Officer Thornton. I'll be right here, I promise. Scout reluctantly allowed Wyatt to lead him away. At the door, Wyatt looked back. Thank you, Catherine said, for everything, for listening to Scout, for not giving up, for being brave even when you didn't feel brave. Thank you, Wyatt replied, for reminding me why this job matters. He left with Scout at his heels, and as they walked through the hospital corridors back toward the exit, Wyatt felt different, lighter, like something heavy he had been carrying for years had finally been set down. One dog, one morning, one choice, and everything had changed. The next 3 months passed in a way that felt both slow and impossibly fast. Catherine recovered, slowly at first, then with increasing strength. The broken leg healed. The head injury left no permanent damage. Her heart weakened, but stubborn kept beating. She went from ICU to a regular room, to a rehabilitation facility, to finally home. Scout never left her side when visiting hours allowed. And when they did not, he stayed with Wyatt. It had happened naturally. Catherine's niece Rachel had come from Seattle that first week, grateful and overwhelmed. She had a job, a family responsibilities she could not abandon. Wyatt had offered to keep Scout until Catherine was well enough to care for him again. That first week became 2, then 3, then a month. Scout slept at the foot of Wyatt's bed, woke him at 5:30 each morning with a wet nose against his hand, sat patiently while Wyatt made coffee, rode along in the patrol car when regulations allowed, and waited at the station when they did not. The dog became a fixture at the precinct. Officers who had barely noticed Wyatt before now stopped to pet Scout to ask about Catherine, to hear the story one more time. The story of the dig who ran through Portland searching for help. The story of the cop who listened. And Lila came. Not just that first night, but again 2 weeks later, then a month after that. Short visits at first awkward with years of distance between them. But slowly, carefully, they found their way back to each other. She met Catherine during one of those visits. The two women bonded immediately over stories of Scout, over shared experiences of loss and rebuilding. Wyatt watched them talk and laugh together and felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. His retirement date approached. 8 months became 6, became 3, became 1, and then it was the day. The precinct had been decorated. Balloons and streamers in police blue and gold. A cake on the break room table. Officers from multiple shifts had come in to say goodbye to Wyatt Thornton, who had served for 38 years and then in his final months had become something more than invisible. Captain Hendricks stood at the front of the room, everyone gathered around. 38 years, the captain said. That's longer than some of you have been alive. Officer Wyatt Thornton has seen this city change, seen policing change, seen everything change, and through it all he showed up. He did the work. He served with integrity and dedication. Polite applause. Wyatt stood near the back, uncomfortable with the attention. But what Wyatt did in his final months, Hendricks continued, reminded all of us why we do this job. He saved a woman's life because he trusted his instincts, because he didn't give up, because when he asked for help, Wyatt listened. Louder applause now, some laughter. A few people glanced at Scout, who sat at Wyatt's feet, dignified and calm. Officer Garrett Mills stepped forward, holding a wooden plaque. He handed it to Wyatt. For service above and beyond, Mills said, for 38 years of dedication, and for showing us that sometimes the best police work doesn't come from a manual. Wyatt took the plaque, looked at it, his name engraved, his years of service, a simple acknowledgement of time spent. But it felt like more than that now. Everyone was looking at him, waiting for him to say something. Wyatt cleared his throat. I'm not good at speeches, he started. A few chuckles. 38 years is a long time, long enough to forget why you started, long enough to feel like you're just going through motions. He paused. That's where I was 8 months ago, going through motions, counting days until I could stop. The room was quiet now. Then I met a dog who wouldn't give up, who needed help and refused to accept no for an answer. And I followed him. Not because I was brave, not because I was trying to be a hero, but because something in me recognized something in him. Wyatt looked down at Scout. We were both looking for purpose, for meaning, for someone to tell us we still mattered. He looked up at the faces around him, colleagues young and old, people he had worked with for years and barely knew. That dog reminded me why I became a cop, to help people and to make a difference, to be there when someone needs you. He held up the plaque. Thank you for this. Thank you for 38 years. But most of all, thank you for letting me end my career remembering what it was supposed to be about. The applause this time was genuine, warm. Several people wiped their eyes. And in the back of the room, barely visible, Lila stood watching her father with pride written across her face. After the ceremony, after the cake was eaten, and the handshakes were exchanged, and the photographs were taken, Wyatt and Lila drove together to Catherine's house. Scout sat in the back seat watching the familiar streets pass by. Catherine lived in a modest home on the east side of Portland. Small yard, tidy garden, a ramp that had been installed after her injury. She met them at the door, walking without the cane, now steady and strong. Wyatt, Lila, perfect timing, dinner's almost ready. Inside, the house smelled like roasting chicken and fresh bread. The table was set for 3. Candles were lit. Music played softly from an old radio on the counter. They ate together, the conversation flowing easily. Catherine told stories about Scout's antics during her recovery, how he had learned to bring her the TV remote, how he barked at the physical therapist until Catherine reassured him it was okay, how he still slept with his head on her pillow every night as if afraid she might disappear. Lila talked about her work in Boston, about her small apartment, about the photography class she had started taking. She mentioned casually that she had been thinking about moving back to Portland. Maybe. Eventually. Wyatt watched them talk, these two women who had become important to him, and felt a contentment he had not known was possible. After dinner, they walked together through the neighborhood, Scout on a leash pulling gently toward every interesting smell. The evening was cool and clear. Stars were beginning to appear overhead. Have you thought about what you'll do now? Catherine asked Wyatt. With all your free time, Wyatt had thought about it a lot. I'm not sure yet. Maybe volunteer work. Maybe just figuring out how to wake up without an alarm. You should get a bow, Isla said, grinning. You've gotten pretty good at it. Wyatt looked at Scout. I was just borrowing this one. Maybe Scout needs two homes now, Catherine said. Mine and yours. Shared custody. The suggestion hung in the air, comfortable and right. I'd like that, Wyatt said. They walked in companionable silence for a while. Scout stopped to investigate a particularly interesting bush. A car passed its headlights sweeping across them. I'm glad you followed him that day, Catherine said quietly. I'm glad you didn't walk away. So am I. Lila linked her arm through Wyatt's. Me too, Dad. They returned to Catherine's house as the sun finished setting. Lila hugged Catherine goodbye, promised to visit again soon. Wyatt and Scout walked her to her rental car. Thank you for coming, Wyatt said. For flying out here, for being here today. Thank you for being my dad, for reminding me that some things are worth flying across the country for. She hugged him tight, then got in her car and drove outside, promising to call tomorrow. Wyatt stood in Catherine's driveway, Scout at his side, and watched the taillights disappear. Time to go home, boy. Scout looked up at him and wagged his tail. They drove back to Wyatt's apartment, the same small space he had lived in for 4 years. But it felt different now. Less empty, less lonely. He fed Scout dinner, made himself a simple meal, sat in his chair by the window, and looked out at the city. On the wall where his uniform had hung for 38 years, there was now a photograph. Taken a month ago, Wyatt, Catherine, Scout, and Lila all together at the park, smiling, happy, a family assembled from pieces that did not quite match but fit together anyway. His phone rang. Catherine, did you get home safe? Just got in. What's up? I'm planning to hike tomorrow morning. Forest Park. Same trail where I fell. I want to face it. Reclaim it. Wyatt understood. Facing fears, moving forward. Want company. That's why I'm calling. 7 a.m. I'll be there. He hung up and looked at Scout, who had settled on his favorite spot on the couch. We're going hiking tomorrow. Scout's tail thumped once against the cushion. Wyatt picked up the retirement plaque from where he had set it on the table. Read the words again. 38 years of service. He thought about all those years, all the calls answered, all the reports filed, all the days that blurred together into one long stretch of invisible service. And then he thought about one morning, one dog, one choice to listen instead of walk away. That single morning had given the previous 38 years meaning, had reminded him why he had put on the uniform in the first place, had brought his daughter back into his life, had introduced him to a friend who understood loneliness and loss, had given him a reason to wake up with purpose instead of just habit. He set the plaque aside and picked up his phone, pulled up his photos, scrolled through recent pictures. Catherine smiling in her hospital bed with Scout, Lila laughing at something Wyatt had said, Scout running through fallen leaves in the park, a whole new gallery of memories, a whole new chapter. He added a new event to his calendar. Hiking with Catherine 7 a.m., then below it another entry, visit Lila in Boston next month, and another, coffee with Mills from the precinct. His retirement was not an ending, it was a beginning. Wyatt settled into his chair, the city lights spreading out before him. Scout jumped down from the couch and came over, resting his head on Wyatt's knee. You changed everything, you know that, Wyatt said quietly, scratching behind the dog's ears. One stubborn puppy who wouldn't take no for an answer. Scout's eyes drifted closed, content and safe. Wyatt thought about Catherine alone in those woods, sending Scout for help with no real hope it would work. Thought about Scout running through the city, searching, refusing to give up. Thought about his own moment of decision on that sidewalk, how easily it all could have gone differently, how close he had come to walking away. But he had not. And because of that, when one choice, two lives had been saved. Catherine's obviously, but his too, in a different way, a quieter way. He had spent 38 years being invisible, doing his job, following rules, keeping people safe. And in the end, what he had needed was someone to save him from his own loneliness, someone to remind him he still mattered, someone to show him that listening, really listening, was sometimes the most important thing you could do. Scout had done that. This small dog with one floppy ear and unshakable determination. This rescue who became the rescuer. The irony was not lost on Wyatt. Catherine had saved Scout from being euthanized. Scout had saved Catherine from dying alone. And together they had saved Wyatt from a retirement that would have been nothing but empty days and forgotten purpose. Full circle, perfect symmetry. His eyes grew heavy. The day had been long and emotional and good. So very good. Scout was already asleep, snoring softly. Wyatt let his own eyes close just for a moment. When he woke, it was dark outside. He had dozed off in the chair. Scout was still there, still asleep, still keeping watch, even in dreams. Wyatt gently moved the dog and stood his body stiff but not painful. He walked to the window one more time. The city was quieter now, late night, the between time when one day ended and another waited to begin. Tomorrow he would hike with Catherine and Scout, face the trail where it all happened, stand at the place where Catherine fell and Scout decided to run for help. Tomorrow he would call Lila and plan his trip to Boston. Really plan it, not just talk about it. Tomorrow he would wake up as a retired police officer, no longer defined by his uniform or his badge, but by the choices he made and the people he chose to care about. Tomorrow. So many tomorrows now, where there had only been empty days before. Wyatt returned to his chair. Scout stirred, repositioned himself to rest his head on Wyatt's foot. "Good boy," Wyatt whispered. "Good boy." And in the quiet of his small apartment, surrounded by photographs of people who mattered and memories still being made, Wyatt Thornton closed his eyes and smiled. He was not invisible anymore. He was seen, known, connected. He was finally home. The next morning, Wyatt's alarm went off at 6 a.m., not because he had to, because he wanted to. Scout was already awake, tail wagging, knowing what today meant. At 7 a.m. sharp, Wyatt pulled up to Catherine's house. She was waiting on the porch, hiking boots on a small backpack slung over one shoulder. No cane, no fear, just determination in her eyes and a smile on her face. "Ready?" Wyatt asked as she climbed into the passenger seat. "I've been ready for 3 months." They drove to Forest Park together, Scout in the back seat, nose pressed to the window. The same trails, the same trees, but different now. The morning was crisp and clear sunlight filtering through the canopy in golden shafts. When they reached the trailhead, Catherine stood for a moment looking at the path that led into the woods. The path she had walked that morning, the path where everything changed. "You okay?" Wyatt asked quietly. "Yeah." She took a deep breath. "Let's go." They hiked slowly, Scout running ahead and circling back, checking on them both. The trail was peaceful in the early morning. Birds singing, squirrels chattering, the smell of pine and damp earth. After about 20 minutes, they reached the spot. Wyatt recognized it immediately. The embankment, the disturbed earth along the edge, the place where Catherine had fallen and Scout had begun his desperate run for help. Catherine stopped, stood at the edge, looked down into the ravine where she had lain for hours, cold and afraid and alone. "I thought I was gonna die here," she said quietly. Wyatt stood beside him. "But you didn't. Because of Scout. Because of you. Because you didn't give up. You sent him for help. You fought to stay alive." Catherine smiled. "We all fought." They stood there for a wild moment, the morning sun warming their faces. Then Catherine turned away from the edge, her back to the ravine facing the trail ahead. "I'm done looking back," she said. "Me too." They continued hiking, The trail wound through the forest, climbing gradually toward a viewpoint Wyatt had never visited before. Scout led the way, full of energy and joy, his floppy ear bouncing with each step. At the summit, Portland spread out below them, the city waking up, sunlight glinting off windows and rivers, cars moving like blood cells through arteries. The whole living, breathing organism of it. Beautiful, Catherine said softly. Wyatt looked at the view, then at Catherine, then down at Scout, sitting between them, panting happily. Yeah, he agreed. It is. They sat on a fallen log, sharing the water bottle Catherine had brought. Scout explored nearby, sniffing everything, occasionally bringing them sticks he thought they should throw. Thank you, Catherine said after a while. For today, for being here. Where else would I be? She smiled. Most people would have moved on by now, back to their lives. Wyatt shook his head. This is my life now. This is what I want. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence watching Scout play. The peace Wyatt felt was unlike anything he had known. Not the quiet of loneliness, not the stillness of emptiness, but the calm of contentment, of purpose, of connection. He thought about the morning 8 months ago, about standing on that sidewalk, looking at a stubborn puppy, making a choice that seemed so small at the time. Follow the dog or walk away, listen or ignore, stay open or stay closed. Such a small choice, such enormous consequences. What are you thinking about? Catherine asked. That morning, Wyatt said, when Scout found me, I almost didn't follow him, almost called animal control and went back to my patrol. I came so close to walking away. But you didn't. No, and I keep wondering, Whitey, what made me say yes that day when I'd spent 38 years saying no to anything that wasn't procedure, wasn't by the book? Catherine looked at him thoughtfully. Maybe you were ready. Maybe all those years of saying no were preparing you for the one time you needed to say yes. Wyatt considered that. Maybe. Or maybe she continued, Scout saw something in you, something you couldn't see in yourself, that you were someone who would listen, who would care, who wouldn't give up. He saw that in a 64-year-old cop who felt invisible. He saw you, Wyatt, really saw you, and you saw him back. Scout chose that moment to return, dropping a particularly impressive stick at Wyatt's feet and looking up expectantly. Wyatt picked up the stick and threw it. Scout raced after it all, joy and energy. He's a good dog, Wyatt said. The best, Catherine agreed. We're lucky to have him. He's lucky to have you. You saved him first, remember? From the shelter, from death. And then he saved me, and you. Catherine smiled. We're all rescues, aren't we? All of us saved by each other. Wyatt thought about that, about Catherine pulling Scout from the shelter, about Scout refusing to let Catherine die alone, about Wyatt choosing to listen when everything in his training said to do otherwise, about Lila flying across the country because she almost lost her father, about all of them broken and lonely in their own ways, finding each other. Yeah, he said, I guess we are. They hiked for another hour, taking a different trail, back one that looped around the forest and emerged near where they had parked. By the time they reached the car, it was nearly 10 a.m. The day had fully arrived warm and bright. Next week, Catherine asked as Wyatt started the engine. Next week, he confirmed. Same time, I'll be here. He drove her home, helped her carry her pack inside, even though she insisted she could manage. Accepted her offer of coffee and sat at her kitchen table while she made it at Scout, lying on the floor between them, exhausted and happy. Lila called me yesterday, Catherine said as she poured. Asked if I'd help her look at apartments. She's serious about moving back. Wyatt felt warmth spread through his chest. Really? Really? She said she's been thinking about it for a while, that she misses Portland, misses you. I can't believe it. Believe it. You gave her something to come back to. A father who's present, who's here, who's not just going through the motions anymore. Wyatt accepted the coffee cup. I was a terrible father for a long time. You were a grieving husband and a dedicated cop. You did the best you could. It wasn't enough. But now you have a chance to do better, and you're taking it. That's what matters. They talked for another hour about Lila's apartment search, about Catherine's upcoming doctor's appointment, about whether Scout was getting too many treats. Small things, normal things, the things that made up a life. When Wyatt finally stood to leave, Catherine walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said, "for today, for every day, for being my friend." "Thank you," Wyatt replied, "for giving me a reason to get up in the morning." She hugged him, brief but genuine. Then Scout nudged between them, demanding attention. "See you tomorrow for coffee?" Catherine asked. "Tomorrow for coffee," Wyatt agreed. He drove home with Scout beside him. The apartment was no longer the empty space it had been 8 months ago. Now it had photographs on the walls. Lila's drawings from childhood that he had finally unpacked. Scout's bed in the corner. Catherine's phone number on speed dial. It had become a home. Wyatt spent the rest of the day quietly. He called Lila, talked for an hour about her apartment search, offered to help with the move when she was ready. He did laundry. He took Scout for a walk around the neighborhood. He made dinner something more than just heating up a frozen meal. He actually cooked. As evening approached, he sat in his chair by the window one more time. Scout was asleep on the couch, snoring gently. The city lights were beginning to glow against the darkening sky. Wyatt pulled out his phone and opened his photo album. The new pictures mixed with old. Margaret smiling on their wedding day. Lila as a child. Catherine in her hospital bed with Scout. The four of them at the park. This morning's hike, Catherine standing at the viewpoint, arms spread wide. A whole life in pictures, past and present, lost and found. He added another event to his calendar. Help Lila apartment hunt next weekend. Visit Margaret's grave, bring flowers. Dinner at Catherine's house, my turn to cook. The days ahead were full, not with obligations, but with choices, with people, with purpose. His phone buzzed, a text from Mills. "Beer sometime. Want to hear more stories from the old days." Wyatt smiled and typed back, "Thursday work. Perfect. 7 p.m., the usual place." Even the precinct was still part of his life. Not as an employee, but as a friend, as someone who mattered. Outside the city continued its evening rhythm. Thousands of people, each with their own stories, their own struggles, their own moments of choice. Wyatt was just one of them now. No badge, no uniform, no authority except what he chose to claim. And yet he felt more powerful than he ever had. Because he had learned something that morning 8 months ago, something Scout had taught him without words. That listening was a form of love. That showing up was a form of courage. That saying yes when everything told you to say no was sometimes the only way to save yourself. Scout stirred on the couch, made a small sound in his sleep. Wyatt got up and covered him with a blanket. The dog barely moved, just settled deeper into sleep. "Good boy," Wyatt whispered. "Good boy." He returned to his chair, picked up the book he had been reading. Something Catherine had recommended. A novel about second chances and finding family in unexpected places. Fitting, he thought. As he read, the evening deepened into night. The city lights grew brighter. The apartment grew quieter. And Wyatt Thornton, 64 years old, 38 years of service, behind him, sat in his chair with a sleeping dog nearby and a full heart within him. He was not counting down days anymore. He was living them. One morning at a time, one choice at a time, one stubborn act of listening at a time. Outside the city slept. Inside, a man and a dog rested together, both of them rescued, both of them found. The silence was not empty now. It was full, rich with possibility, warm with purpose. And when morning came, they would walk together into whatever came next. Together. The way it was always meant to be.